Hello everyone, my name is Carly Jensen and I am a fellow with the Civil War Institute here at Gettysburg College. Today I am outside of the Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center located here in Gettysburg, which was the site of some contentious fighting during the Civil War. The Lutheran Seminary was founded by Samuel Simon Schmucker, a Lutheran minister originally from Hagerstown, Maryland. He was born in 1799 and lived in Maryland for most of his life until he attended the University of Pennsylvania at the age of 15. He then attended the Theological Seminary of Princeton, where he was ordained a Lutheran minister. He practiced his ministry for a few years before he was chosen to be on a committee searching for the next great place to put a Lutheran seminary. The committee chose Gettysburg, and construction began on the seminary soon after, as well as construction on a feeder school, which is known as Pennsylvania College, today known as Gettysburg College. However, both schools would only function for a few years before the Civil War made its way to Gettysburg. On the evening of June 30th, 1863, Union Brigadier General John Buford made his way up into the cupola, which you see behind me. It was here that he was able to observe for miles, looking at all the area surrounding Gettysburg. It was to his dismay that to the west he saw thousands of Confederate fires burning. He knew that the battle was bound to happen soon, and he began planning the Union defense. However, the Union did not keep control of the ridge for very long at all. After the first day, the Confederates took control of the Seminary Ridge and the Lutheran Seminary. And in fact, just down the street, we have Lee's headquarters. However, the Lutheran Seminary was transformed into a Civil War hospital, housing both Union and Confederate troops. These men suffered horrible conditions. The Confederates had ransacked the seminary and taken many of the supplies. And they even took the chloroform, which was impossible for men to perform surgeries without, the doctors to perform surgeries without. In fact, the Confederates were so cruel to the Union soldiers that they often ignored their requests and pleas for help. The Union Lieutenant Colonel George McFarland recounted that for 3 days we were left without food, drink, or attendance, to listen with painful anxiety to the booming of cannon and the din of battle. When the Union troops regained control of the seminary after the battle, they continued to suffer from a lack of supplies and horrible conditions. Civil War hospitals often were understaffed and overworked. In fact, there was a ratio about 1 doctor to every 150 patients, which was pretty brutal. They suffered from disease, death, and agony. Men who fought so bravely during the war were now faced with disease, disaster, and sorrow. They suffered from amputated limbs and death. In fact, there was a mass grave outside the seminary, as well as a mass limb pit for all the amputations that took place. Schmucker himself had fled from the site of the seminary before the battle began in fear of retribution from Confederates who didn't like him because of his staunch abolitionist stance. But there were several members of the Lutheran Seminary household who remained behind, including the Ziegler family, who served as the mistress and steward of the seminary. Their family served as nurses and companions for many of the patients here, as well as Sally Broadhead, who was a Gettysburg resident and served as a nurse here at the seminary. Eventually, the Sisters of Charity, the United States Sanitary Commission, and the Women's Central Association of Relief all came in to assist with the hospital. However, the hospital was here for several months after the battle, which is pretty typical of a Civil War hospital. After the fighting of a major battle, such as Gettysburg, these camps would spring up and serve as hospitals for several months to help care for those soldiers who couldn't leave because of their extent of their injuries. So they continued to stay here and recuperate. It wasn't until mid-September that the last patient, Lieutenant Colonel George McFarland, who we heard from earlier, left the seminary. He had his leg amputated and several complications with that, and so he was forced to stay at the hospital until then. Schmucker immediately began to decide that classes should resume as soon as possible, and so the week after he left, all the students came back to the seminary and resumed their class studies. However, this battle was still here in a sense. There was bloodstains on the floor, cannibal damage on the side of Schmucker's house, as well as other property damages. The battle was still here, and the students could feel it. However, Schmucker and the seminary pushed through and continued to teach. While classes may have returned to normal, the sacrifices made by the brave men and women here will never be forgotten. Thank you so much.